Welcome back to Make 'em Take 'em for another journey into British basketball. I'm Mark Mills, and today I'm joined by Sean Adlam.
How you doing, guys?
And Seb Gigner.
Hi everyone, thank you for joining for episode 3.
So we're going to take you through the up-and-coming weekend's BBL schedule. Bit of a tough call this weekend for what we were going to select as game of the week, but we've chosen the S Group Eagles Newcastle hosting the London Lions as our game of the week. Eagles, second in the league, not really had not had the season they'd expect, but not a bad season. Lions, fourth in the league, and after a recent coaching change, they've started to find some form, but came unstuck last weekend in Bristol. Sean, what are your thoughts on this game?
Last game, obviously in October, and the Eagles come up by 6. But Darius Defoe has an incredible game. He ends up with 30 points, and he comes up big down the stretch. I think it's going to be an emotional, physical and hard-fought contest, and it was going to be very entertaining because, like you said, coaching change, Lions are really starting to fly. They had an upset last weekend, but that's motivation, right? They've got to take that as the push forward to come in against Newcastle, the all singing, all dancing Newcastle Eagles, the country's most successful club, second in the league. They've got to come into this game, with something behind them. So I think, it's going to be a really good fun game, intense.
Yeah, and what about you, Seb? Where do you see this one being decided?
Well, in terms of being decided, that's a very difficult question. But I think London, they'll see this game as an exciting one, won't they? Because Newcastle are a bit of a team, everyone wants to beat. But if Vince McCauley's London Lions want to prove what they're about in the second half of this season, then this is no better a game for it. And I think they've shown flashes since Vince has taken over as head coach again that they can play at the very best, and I wouldn't be surprised to see this one being closer than maybe a few people expect.
Yeah, I think you're right. That's kind of why it's selected as game of the week. I think this is going to be an exceptionally close game. The backcourt duo of Page and Nimley is probably one of the strongest and most dynamic in the league, for the Eagles. But then you look at the Lions, they're going to go up against the likes of Robinson. Robinson, one of the best British players probably to play in the BBL in recent years. But is it going to come down to that front court? The combination of Dixon and Peel for London, that's a really impressive front court for the Lions. But that said, you then look across to the Eagles, and like you said, last time out against the Lions, Defoe had a huge game. This really is going to be a tough one to call, but I am going to ask you to do it. Sean, what's your prediction for this one?
I'm going to give it to the Eagles, but in single figures. It's not going to be, it's going to be a close game. So it's within 4 to 6 points, but I'm going to give it to the Eagles.
Okay, Seb, how do you see this one finishing?
I really would like to give this to the Lions, but then, as you say, you look over to that backcourt and you think, well, it's going to be so difficult, isn't it? Jason Page is so difficult to play against, and I think typically, no matter how well Newcastle might play, I think their star players get them over the line, and I think Newcastle win this game by 5 points. Yeah,
I think I agree with you, actually. I think Eagles were probably a bit too strong. I think also they're their tails are up a little bit with regards, beating Riders recently has kind of opened up the title race for them again, and they've got a sniff of that league title, and we know how they love that up in the northeast. So yeah, I've got the Eagles. I think it might be a little bit more. I think it might be early double digits. I think they might clean that one by 10. But again, it should be a good contest to watch. Friday's full of huge games, including Sharks taking on the Phoenix and Sheffield. Sharks, they've had a more stable season than recent years, and it's really showing on the floor, sitting 6th, and they look strong. Cheshire, resurgent season. They're obviously coming off the back of winning the BBL Cup final for the first time in their history. That'll be interesting to see how that affects the rest of their season. Seb, what do you see as the most interesting aspect of this one?
I think the most interesting aspect, as you say, is if Cheshire can carry this on going forward. I don't see any reason why they can't carry it on. But Sheffield will be saying, "Hey, you might have just won the BBL Cup, but we're here, we're contenders this season, and we're going to shut you down." I think that's going to be a difficult one for Cheshire to adjust to, and I think Sheffield, whether it be someone like Mackie McKnight making the difference that Cheshire might not be able to cope with defensively, either way, no matter who it might be for Sheffield, I think the Sharks will just win that one. I think it'll be by 9 points.
Yeah, interesting. Sean, what are you looking forward to in this game?
I'm looking forward to it because, it's the first time these guys have got together this year. And to me, they're fairly evenly matched teams. For me as well, I'm looking forward to this game because I said this in the last episode and we talked about it. Dirk Williams is just so fun to watch. I'm looking forward to seeing him. But I do think that the Sharks have got the edge in this one, I think, purely because, Cheshire are just coming off that cup win. So I think this is now for the Sharks to say, all right, we can come in and we can still beat you. So yeah, I've got them down as winning in single figures, probably about 9 points.
Yeah, for me, it's going to be an interesting one. I think the one thing that really stands out to me is I think the Sharks have the front court that can contain Gettys. They can rotate through. They don't have the 7-footer, but they can rotate through Tuck, Marsden, Ryblicki, and really put some pressure on Gettys and test him throughout the 40 minutes. And for me, that's going to decide the game. How does that front court of Sheffield contain Gettys? If they can, that releases the likes of Alexander, Williams, Gachette to go out on the offensive end and score. So for me, I think it's going to be a close game, but I think they'll kind of have a bit of a hangover from the cup final, so I think Sheffield will probably take this one by high single digits, maybe 8-9 points. Seb, what's your thoughts? Who's walking away with a win on this one?
As I said, I think it's going to be Sheffield just about, and I think they'll win it by about 9 points.
Okay, it's going to be a close one, that's for sure. Also on Friday night, Riders make the short trip to Worcester, take on the Wolves. Leicester sitting high in the league in first place year after year. They just seem to get stronger and stronger. Worcester had a bit of a slow start to the season, but they're building for what could be a big season. They obviously lost the BBL Cup final, so that may be a bit of a low for them. A strong settled roster now, though, and it will be key for the rest of the season for them. Sean, are the Riders just too good for the Wolves, do you think?
Yes. And you know, without being funny about it, I think it's just that simple. I think they are just that much better. And it's not just they're that much better than the Wolves. They're that much better than a considerable amount of the teams in this league. The way that they're playing right now on both ends of the floor is just going to make it such a tough night for the Wolves, especially like you said, they're coming off a loss in the cup final. Now that does one of two things to a team, that either G's them up or, you know, you hang your head a little bit. So it's down now to the coaching staff and the players themselves to see what they can do and how they're going to attack this game. It's a really difficult game for them to come out after a loss like that's got silverware involved and then take on top of the league. But yeah, it's going to be an entertaining game, I think. But I just think Riders are just too strong, and that is on both ends of the floor. They just outclass the Wolves, I think.
Yeah, Leicester are a strong one. Seb, do you think Worcester have the depth to deal with Leicester?
Yes, they do. I'm going to have to disagree really with what Sean said, that Leicester are way better than everyone. I think if anyone's going to pose a problem for Leicester this season, it's going to be Worcester in Worcester, which is not an easy place to go. And Worcester will be more motivated than ever to win this game off the back of losing the BBL Cup final. You see players on Twitter like Mike Ojo and LV Sedusha. They're not happy. They're angry, and they'll see this game, they'll pencil it, and they'll say, this is the game that we prove ourselves and that we can win things this season. And I think it's good. I'm not saying that Leicester are going to lose. I just think it's going to be a lot closer than people might expect. Worcester is a very, very difficult place to go and play well and stop the offensive juggernaut that Worcester can become at home. And I think it's going to be a big test for Leicester. Whether it's enough to knock them off, I'm not too sure. But Worcester, I think, have a good chance in this game.
Yeah, no, it sounds a bit of a cliche for me. I think the Wolves will come back like a bit of a wounded animal after that BBL Cup final. They have talent throughout their roster. They have probably one of the most expensive rosters in the league. So there's no two ways about it. They have the ability to compete. But I do think, to a point, I agree with Sean that the Leicester roster is just that slight notch or two above the majority of the other teams in the league. But again, this is why we love BBL basketball. On the night, it could go to anyone. I think this might be one of the closest games of the weekend. I think Riders might sneak this by a couple of points. Sean, what's your kind of take? What's your spread on this one?
I think I've got it as Riders by 10 plus, but that 10 plus means that the last 2 minutes it's going to be close, and then you're going to get into the foul game, and then Riders going to hit their free throws, and they'll end up winning by 10, and it won't be a true reflection of the game. So it's going to be close up until midway through the fourth, and I think Riders take off. Okay,
Seb, who's taking the win in this one?
Well, I'm going to be really, really difficult here and probably upset a lot of Riders fans just because it's a bit of a fun pick, isn't it? And I really do believe in this Worcester team, having spoken to LVC for so long, LV Sedusha. I think that he sort of summarised what this team's about and that they're not going to give up. And that BBL Cup final defeat is only going to ignite the spark in Worcester. And I think this is the game that Worcester arrive in the league this season and say that they are contenders. And I think they're going to win it by 2 points.
That's a huge call, Seb. I tell you, if you nail that one, that puts you on a pedestal massively. That puts you. You'd be the new messiah of British basketball. If you pick that one out, There's going to be some good odds on that one as well for the betting folk out there. Moving on to the final game on Friday night, Glasgow Rocks taking on the Flyers. The Rocks have had a bit of an up and down season, but still on track for a pretty good league finish. Bristol continuing to improve. They've had some strong performances this season. Sean, how important do you think that home court advantage for the Rocks will be?
We spoke about this last week. Episode 2, we spoke about that, how far it is away. Glasgow is an intimidating trip for the team. But on the other hand of that, these guys, they're professional basketball players. So they should be ready to go. But home court advantage, up in Glasgow, it's big. It always has been. They've got a good set of fans. They're loud. And it's a lot to deal with. And the Flyers as well, like up and down. So I think, realistically, there's some places between them on the table, but they're not dissimilarly matched teams. But I just think purely because of, that road trip up for the Flyers is a lot. So I'm going to give it to the Rocks.
On. It's a bit of a different beast, isn't it, for Glasgow when they're at home? They have that big crowd, and I think Bristol, they're not consistent enough at the minute to sort of go there and stage an upset. And if guys like Earl Brown and Kieran Achara are on their game, I think they are just too strong for a Bristol roster that is perhaps not as good as it should be at the minute. So I think I'm going to give that one to Glasgow.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting game. I think Glasgow have got to be the clear favourites in it. Like you say, some of the guys they've got six of their team are averaging double-digit scoring, which is always a healthy place to be. So they can kind of hit you from anywhere, and it's not all front court, it's not all back court. There's a good mix across the board, and I think Bristol, on their day, have the potential to really challenge the best teams in the league. It's just that consistency that they seem to lack this season so far. They've had good performances, but then they've had other games where they just really haven't, shown what they can do. And again, I think I'm with you on this one, Seb. I think it's a Glasgow win. And I think it's probably going to be in double digits. I think between 10 and 15 point win for Glasgow. Sean, where do you see this one? What's the spread on this one?
Yeah, similar. Rocks by 10, 10 at least. It could balloon up. They could get out of hand again. Late in the fourth, where you sit your starters down. If it's not close, it could balloon out of hand and get up to something like 20. But I'm going to say between sort of 10 and 12.
And what about you, Seb? You obviously said you think Glasgow's going to win. What's your kind of point spread do you think you'll get?
I think Glasgow aren't going to have any problems. I think they're going to win from start to finish. And I think it's going to be not too big of a gap, but comfortable enough. I think it's going to be by about 15.
Okay, so that rounds off Friday night's action. Saturday only has one game penciled in. It's usually a bit of a sparse one for the BBL Saturday nights. But this Saturday we've got Riders completing a back-to-back at home against the Giants. Seb, fatigue no doubt going to play a part in Riders' performance. Giants are 11th in the league though, so they have enough to beat Leicester.
As much as I made that speculative pick of Worcester, I think even it'd be too far for me here to say that Manchester are going to win this game. Famous last words, of course. But
that'd be a terrible weekend for Leicester. If they lose to Worcester and Manchester, that's I can imagine exactly what Rob Paternoster will be talking about Monday morning if that happens.
Well, who knows? Maybe that game against Worcester, they might just edge it, but then they'll run out of steam for the Manchester game. Manchester, as I said before in episode 2, Manchester have been in some close games against some tough teams, and they might see this as an opportunity to stick around, and who knows what happens at the end. But I think it's dreamland, really, to say that they're going to overturn Leicester in Leicester. I could be wrong, but I think that Leicester force, even if they do just play the night before, I think it's just going to be too strong for Manchester to contend with, and I think Leicester will probably win that one quite easily.
Yeah, I think, if you go to the form book, that's the way it would look. Sean, can you see Manchester serving what would be the biggest upset of the season to the Riders?
No.
And that's that. That's Sean's comment. Perfect. Go on, Sean.
I just can't see it, and people talk a lot about back-to-back games and things like this, but these guys are professional athletes, and, I don't think it makes any difference for a Riders team. They've got to travel a little bit and then play a game. These guys are playing at such a level where they're ready to play every night. The only thing I can hope for the Giants is that we get a repeat of some of the attempts in the dunk contest that we saw last weekend, because that's going to be the only exciting thing that's going to happen for them, because they're going down and it's going to be fairly ugly, I think. Yeah,
I think that's where the form book says it is a huge ask for the Giants to go. In Manchester, you got a bit of a chance, but then in Riders, in their new arena, that's an even bigger ask. So yeah, I agree with you. I think it's going to be a healthy win win for the Riders. For me, the potential to be a 30-plus game, a win for this one. What about you, Seb? Where do you see the scores going on this?
I think it'll be closer at first than expected. Manchester will give Leicester a little bit of trouble. Then Leicester's quality, it's going to have to come through at some point, isn't it? So I think Leicester will win this game by about 18 points.
Okay, what about you, Sean? What's the spread?
20, 25, something like that. It's not going to be pretty down there, I don't think. It's going to be, they're going to roll on through it. We might see quite a few junior players getting some minutes at the end of the game because of how the score ends up.
Yeah, potential there with that one. So we've now got 3 games left to look at, all of them on Sunday. First up, it's Leeds Force hosting Worcester Wolves at the Carnegie Sports Arena. It really is teams at the opposite ends of the spectrum meeting here. Leeds, bottom of the table with just 1 win. Don't really look like that's going to change anytime soon, whereas Worcester, bar the BBL Cup final, they really do seem to be a team finding their form. Sean, do you think this is going to be a straightforward win for Worcester?
Yeah, I do. It's unfortunate, you say that. You look at Leeds sitting down there quite lonely at the bottom, but they just don't have the stopping power to touch a bit on what Seb talked about earlier. When Wolves really get it going, their offense really gets going. And with a game like this, they're going to have they're going to be able to get going. And I just don't see the Force having anything to be able to combat them offensively. Again, I think it's probably a fairly ugly game for Leeds.
Okay, Seb, what do you think? Can you see Leeds causing an upset on Sunday?
I mean, obviously, for obvious reasons, I really want to say yes, Leeds can contend, but I don't know. Going back, I think an important point you have to reference here is the last game Leeds played Worcester for the first time back at the start of December, and it was a heavy, heavy loss by about 50 points for Leeds. And I remember the players were there after the game, the Leeds Force players staring up at the scoreboard and saying that they can't let this happen again against Worcester. They can't let this happen the next time round. And who knows, that might give them the extra bit of motivation to go into this game like a wounded lion. But I guess Worcester are in a similar position. I can't see Leeds competing. I think they're getting better at home, Leeds. They have looked a bit better. Remember that they only did just lose by 8 to Bristol Flyers, but Worcester are a different animal, aren't they? I think it might be closer than people expect, but I think Worcester and the players they have will just be a bit too much for a Leeds team who are still looking for that depth in a number of positions. So I think it's going to be a Worcester win, this one.
Yeah, no, it's tough not to agree with you. I think Worcester will walk away with this one quite comfortably. Interestingly enough, Worcester is the only team that Leeds Force are yet to beat. So this is obviously 4th season for Leeds Force. They've beaten every other team in the BBL except Worcester. So to pile it on to Leeds a bit more, not only are they going against a team that's flying high, but it's also absolutely their bogey team within the BBL. But yeah, Worcester just too strong across the board. Front court, back court, through their bench, just an awful lot of talent. The one thing that they won't outdo Leeds on is heart and hustle and work rate. The Leeds guys know that they're going up against very, very talented, experienced teams week in, week out, and they just try and put everything on the floor that they can. And I imagine before the end of the season that'll pick them up a win or two just for pure hustle and heart. But I don't think it's going to happen this Sunday. I've got this one as a 25-point win for Worcester. Sean, what about you?
I haven't got it quite that high. I've said, sort of 15 to the 18 kind of thing, because a 25-point win is big. But like Seb says, they did lose by 50 at the beginning of the year, so you never know. But I think 15 to 20 is a decent estimate on this one.
And what about you, Seb? How big's the deficit going to be?
Well, I don't want to focus on that. I think I'm going to be a little bit kinder here to Leeds. It's going to be a Worcester win, but I think guys like Jamal Davis have just come in and given Leeds a little bit of life. They're going to make it a closer game than it would have been a couple of months ago. Eric Kerf, Jamal Davis, they're good players, and I think they'll keep the score under 20. I think it'll be about a 15-point Worcester win.
Okay, so game 2 on Sunday sees the Plymouth Raiders taking on the DBL Sharks Sheffield at the Pavilions down in Plymouth. Plymouth continuing to add to their roster, but yet to find the form that quality really kind of demands. They're 10th in the league with a 4-win, 14-loss record. Seb, Sheffield will want to make sure they avoid this banana skin, because that's really what it is for them. What are the important aspects of this game in their eyes?
Well, important, as you say, they can't hesitate going into this game, because even though it might be a banana peel looking at the league table, if they go into this game against guys like Keanu Rochford and like guys like Neil Watson, they'll get torn apart if they don't take this seriously. And they'll only have just played recently. They'll be playing Cheshire. Plymouth will be playing their first game of the weekend, and Plymouth will think, at least at home, that they might have a sizable chance of at least competing it be winning or not, I don't know. But Sheffield, they can't hesitate going into this game. If they want to be taken seriously as contenders this season, they have to be ruthless. And I think that will be a big game in terms of how Sheffield are going to be perceived by the rest of the league for this season.
Yeah, I think you're right. It is an important game outside of just the win. I think there is more on the line, kind of credibility for Sheffield. Sean, who do you think? What do you think are the important matchups in this one?
Important matchups, I think. I mean, when you look at Sheffield and you look at, they've got two high volume scorers. They've got two out of the top 10 scorers in the league. You've got Alexander and Williams, both sitting around 18 points a game, and that's going to be big because I don't think the Raiders have really got an answer for that too much. And the Raiders are a funny one again because we've talked about inconsistency with them before. Now they have, Rochford, they've got Watson, they've got great players, and you've got the ability there to play the 1-2 punch, high low, whatever you want to do. But it's if they bring it on this game. So yeah, I mean, I think it should be a fairly interesting game. But overall, I can see Sharks coming away with this one.
Okay, so with that in mind, Seb, who have you got for this one, and what do you think the score kind of split's going to be?
I think Plymouth are going to give Sheffield a bit of a fright in this game at home, but I think eventually that quality will prove just a bit too much for Plymouth, especially defensively. And I think Sheffield are going to pick Plymouth apart from an offensive perspective, and I think they'll win this game by about 10 points. Okay,
what about you, Sean? Who have you got winning this one, and what spread?
I'll agree with Seb exactly. It's just going to be the fact that I don't think Plymouth can stop Sheffield on the offensive end. And it comes down to a 10-12 point game by the Sharks.
You see, this is my curveball. This is my punt for the weekend. I'm taking Plymouth on this one. I agree with you. I think the point that Seb raised, the fact that Sheffield, this is their second game of the weekend, that they've got to make the travel to the southwest, and that Plymouth are laden with talent. And for me, week on week, that's got to improve. As long as they can keep a stable roster together, that's going to start paying dividends. And I think there's an awful lot of players there that have got a point to prove. The likes of Watson and Rochford massively have got a point to prove of what they can do because they've underperformed so far. For me, I think that Plymouth are going to take this one by 5 in the end. So it'll be a close game, but I think Plymouth are going to sneak it.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I would like to see that happen.
It would be good. It would be good.
That's the result I would like to see. But is it one I can see happening? No.
Okay, okay, I like that. What we'll try and do is we'll put our predictions up on Facebook and we'll get a bit of a poll going, and let's see what we.
You can all laugh at Mark that way.
Yeah. Point and laugh. I'm used to it. I've had it my whole life. So the final game of our preview is going to be the Giants taking on the Eagles on Sunday. Giants completing their back-to-back after the away game in Leicester on Saturday night, whereas Newcastle have had an extra day's rest. Tough. Giants taking on the top team on Saturday and then the second place team on Sunday. Sean, do you think that's going to have a huge impact that it's a back-to-back against two big teams?
I think this might be the most depressing weekend of the year for Giants and Giants fans. They've got a back-to-back with the best two teams in basketball, in British basketball. It's not going to be any fun.
Okay, Seb, how do you see this one playing out?
Well, honestly, I can see this being a bit of a headache for Newcastle. I'm going to be entirely honest, and I say this because I'm really looking forward to the Manchester-Leeds showdown at the bottom of the league in about a week's time, and I think this game is going to ruin it because I think Manchester... I think they're going to pick up a 1 point win in this game. I don't know why. I think I'd probably put down
win.
Wow.
A full court heat.
I'll say why. I think it's just because Newcastle this season, under Fab Flanoy, have not been their rigorous self at times in big games. I think they've shown a bit of like a psychological weakness, I think, at times. And I think that eventually that's going to have to... That we've seen it against Leicester, obviously, and we've seen it against Cheshire. But I think that eventually that's going to have a bit of an effect against a team who might not expect to beat Newcastle. And I think that's going to happen this weekend. And I think that's going to be a big wake-up call for Newcastle in terms of what they want to achieve this season. And I don't know. I just think Manchester, they're a bit special in terms of what they've got, in terms of the home fans and the players they've got. I think even if they don't beat Leicester, I think they've got to get a surprise win this weekend, or at least I think that in my heart of hearts, and I think Manchester will sneak a 1 point victory against Newcastle Eagles.
Well, all I'd like to say is thanks, Seb, you've taken a bullet for me from the previous one. The people are no longer pointing and laughing at me. I think they might have changed their focus. Sean, He's completely contradicted you. You've obviously predict a Eagles win. Is it going to be a big one? What kind of point spread are we expecting?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be fairly big, in 15 to 18 kind of thing. But I think Seb is right. Eagles do have this tendency to not arrive for the games that they should win easily. And it's kind of been like that for a long time. But because, they can beat all the other teams, they're okay. But they have lost over the history of the Eagles. They've lost some games which they really, really shouldn't have. So I do agree with Seb on that, but I still don't see this being a happy weekend for Manchester. It's a 15-point loss at least.
Yeah, no, I think I agree with you. I think the Eagles are just too strong. There's too much dynamite in that backcourt. Page and Nimley, them being backed up by Lasker and Bazzi, and you're going to ask, Callum Jones to play 40 minutes against that dynamite. That's a huge ask for anyone to play. Yeah. Not even taking into account he's played the night before 40 minutes against Leicester. I just think it's a huge ask for Manchester. I think if it was their only game of the weekend, then it gives them a bit of a chance, particularly in Manchester. It's a cold gym, the floor's not great, the lighting's not great, so it gives them a bit of a home court advantage. But for me, this is it should be a double digits win. Maybe not high double digits, but a double digits win for Newcastle on that one. Interesting to go through this weekend's games.
I think if Manchester pulled this off, I should be getting a congratulatory phone call from Danny Byrne and maybe David Kadiri.
I think you will. I think you will. We might have to sort out some kind of certificate or plaque for you if your predictions are bang on this weekend.
Poster.
Yeah, unreal. So that brings us to the end of today's Make 'em Take 'em. As we said, let's hope our credibility is still intact when we're back here next Tuesday for the next episode. I just want to thank Sean and Seb for joining me today.
Thanks for listening, guys.
Thank you, guys. I hope my predictions come true, but we'll see, won't we?
And I want to take this opportunity to thank all of you guys for listening to us. I've been overwhelmed by how well this podcast has been received. We promise to keep trying to bring you as much British basketball coverage as we can over the coming weeks, months, and hopefully years. And in return, we just ask that you share this through your own social media accounts. The more listeners we get, the better we can make our coverage. If you want to get in touch, then please do drop us an email to team@makeemtakeem.co.uk. And so I'll leave you with these wise words of great Dean Smith. If you make every game a life and death proposition, you're going to have a lot of problems. For one thing, you'll be dead a lot. See you all soon.